Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 18 of the MinnEDsota podcast. We kicked this off just a little over a year ago. I think it was in February of 2021. The Dr. Todd Van Erp, and I decided we'd give this a run. I don't know if our listenership has grown or not throughout the last year, but it sure has been fun doing this episode or doing this podcast and following through and trying to give something for educational leaders in Minnesota. And today we're going to jump back in time and share some information and build on it from what was episode number 2 on calendars. And it's a follow-up to our last podcast from 2 weeks ago. So we are excited to be here with you, and we hope that you are gaining some knowledge and information that makes your life easier. And welcome to yet another episode. How are you doing, Dr. Van Erp?
I'm doing great. It's actually, there's, I don't know if you have noticed, Kip, but there's this yellow disc up in the sky, and it like came up this morning and I saw it come up. I think a lot of people refer to it as the sun. So I'm just excited to have seen it this morning, and I'm actually at the office today up in Fergus Falls, and it was a sunshiny drive up here. So and just like I'm looking at my podcast right now, March 11th was our pilot episode. So we are over a year old. This baby is 13 months old. So we've been able to make it. We've had some starts and stops along the way, but dang, 13 months already? That's hard to believe.
And we still have like a small following. It might be in double digits. I'm not totally sure, but maybe we need to do a better job of promoting that we're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Anchor, just about anywhere that you get your podcasts.
Yep. And hopefully, like, I don't have to keep paying my family members to listen to these episodes. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. Well, last time we were talking about email tips, tricks, and hacks that we kind of shared and trying to help people buy back some time in their day, because we know it's crazy being a school leader right now in terms of trying to fit everything in. Still dealing with staff shortages, different ramifications from COVID, the pandemic still. And so just trying to help people get their balance in terms of their time management so that they can be an effective and efficient leader, but yet also be a human being and a parent and a spouse and whatever other identities they have outside of being a school leader. And so this is a little bit of a throwback to episode 2, where we shared some calendar pointers, but we're going to go a little bit deeper. And we're also going to share a little bit of some time management strategies that we've talked about. And so as we kicked it off a couple weeks ago, we mentioned it's like a diet, right? That we're not going to give you anything that is earth shattering or new, but hopefully we're giving you permission, and it's your job to decide if you're going to stick to the diet or not.
And you talked, Kip, about we talked about, we're going back to something that we talked about on episode 2, and I almost feel like around email management and calendar management, this is something that we could talk about every month, because I think for some people this can be overwhelming, because when you start thinking about the things that we'll talk about today around calendar management, people think, man, like you really want me to schedule every minute of my day? It's kind of like your family budget. If you don't have a plan for every penny that you bring in over the course of the month, you need to be in control of your money, right? For your family budget. And it's the same thing with your time. You need to be in control of it. You need to know where every minute is going, and you need to be efficient in that. But that, we're going to talk about this today, is like your schedule needs to show your priorities. So if you are doing a lot of things in your schedule that are not reflecting your priorities, it is going to suck the energy right out of you. So you can do, and I see that you already switched the screen here for those of you that are on YouTube. Um, you know, if you're doing a lot of tasks day after day that don't reflect your priorities, you're, like I was saying, it's going to suck the energy out. I'll give you an example. When I was a principal, I like the thing that gave me energy was being in classrooms. So doing classroom visits, and not necessarily observations, just going and visiting classrooms so I knew what was going on in classrooms. I drew energy from that, and I had to make sure that I was intentional about putting that into my schedule on a daily and weekly basis. So I know that this is probably something that Kip has done, where you schedule blocks of time to be in classrooms, or you schedule blocks of time to go down to the lunchroom and visit with students, or you schedule time at the beginning of the day as students are coming into the building. You schedule time at the end of the day when students are leaving the building. Put all of those things in your schedule, because for me, it was a priority to connect with students, to connect with staff. If that's something that is a priority for me, I have to put it in my schedule. That doesn't mean that it has to stay there. Like if I'm doing classroom visits, I know that you do this, Kip, like you grab those things and you move them to where you have openings in your schedule, right?
Yeah. Well, and you hit on a couple of different things and I think the title of episode 2 was, do you own your calendar or does your calendar own you?
I
And
think you're
that
right.
and that's,
Yeah.
and so as we talk about some of these things, like you said, putting our priorities in. I even went as far as I had an alarm on my phone that went off every morning at 7:15, because when I was the principal in Sartell, our kids got off the bus at 7:20. So I had an alarm that went off at 7:15, so I had enough time to get up, get my coat back on, and head on out to the buses, because I wanted to be out there and greet them every single day that I was in the building. And then the same was true at the end of the day. I had an alarm that went off to send me back out. Um, and so it wasn't just having it on my calendar. It was so important to me that I set an alarm so that I would not get distracted by something else and miss it.
Yeah. So put those things in your calendar, and don't think that you're being like overly crazy by like having every minute of your day scheduled, because this is how you are efficient in using your time. You own your calendar. I'm just looking at the list here. Schedule the important items first. It says on this slide, time in classrooms, observations and evaluations. Those are things that need to get done as a principal. Team meetings, whether you're meeting with your leadership team or grade level teams or departments, whatever that might be. If you have one-on-one meetings with staff members or with students or parents, put all of those things into your schedule.
Well, and the sooner you can do it, the better too, right? Like I used
Yeah.
to in August try to schedule which weeks I would be doing observations with which staff members, not necessarily which day, but what week it was going to happen, so that I knew that I had it plotted out, that I was going to be able to get all of the observations and evaluations done on time in a manner that was going to be able for us to make budget decisions or decisions around which teachers we may not be keeping anymore, but it would still give them time to go find a different opportunity. So I try to schedule those things as soon as I can, and that included like professional development meetings, team meetings, or leadership team meetings, getting them on the calendar in August for the whole year, because it's much easier to take things off the calendar if you don't need them than it is to try to find time to get it on the calendar when you do.
Yep. And as you're scheduling those things, if you can make them recurring events, have them set up so that they're already in your calendar throughout the school year. And then you can, as that week comes up, like Kip was talking about, Kip can only get into to observe teacher A. She's doing a lesson on something and it's at a time that is open for him. Kip can grab that calendar that calendar slot or that meeting slot and slide it to the time that works in his schedule and the teacher's schedule. So use recurring events as much as you can. There's another bullet point on this slide here, Kip, about backfilling your calendar to use it as a time study. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, because some of us aren't great about being able to like function in a world where our calendar is full. To some people, that's suffocating. Um, or it's just not how they operate. But it is important to at the end of the day, or even at the end of every calendar activity, is to like backfill your calendar so that when you get to Friday, you can look back and go, did I live my priorities this week? Did I get all the things in that I hold of high value, and make sure that I did it? Because otherwise, you start looking back at your week and go, what did I really accomplish? But when you backfill, you can totally see what you accomplished this week.
Yeah, that's an important point. Oh, my lights just went out here. That's an important point because I don't think when I was as an administrator, I didn't spend enough time going back to reflect on what I had done for the week. I was so focused on these tasks that I didn't take 15 or 20 minutes and reflect on what I actually accomplished for the week. So don't again put that in your calendar. Put 15 minutes at the end of your week to reflect on what you've done.
And even one of the things, like I said, I had it scheduled out. I knew I was going to be doing 2 or 3 observations a week, and most of the principalships that I had, from October till March or April. And so one of the things I also did is on like Friday afternoons, I would pick a time slot, like 1:00, to wrap up the paperwork of the evaluations.
Yeah.
And it was just always on my calendar as blocked out. Again, something that can be moved. If it doesn't work this Friday, I could do it on Monday, or I could move it to a different time on Friday, or I could move it to Thursday. But just making sure that I set aside time every week to wrap up the paperwork side of those evaluations that had been completed. So it becomes, like I said, just it becomes your agenda, right? Like all of a sudden you're not having to think so hard about what you're going to do next, because you have things just planned out and done. And so other things that you could put on your
But
calendar.
before you jump on this, Kip, I just want to go back to what you just said. It's okay for you as the principal to schedule time during the day to get these observations completed, like get the report written up. You don't have to do that in the evening. Okay. If you don't have to, do it during your workday. Like Kip was just talking about, schedule time in your workday where you have a half an hour or however much time you need to actually get this done. Okay. So that's all I wanted to add there, Kip.
A little time management pointer on that too is with your observation and your evaluation, how much of it can you be doing in real time, right? Like that you're not taking notes and then going back and retyping or doing some different things that way. Like how much of it can you have and be done in real time?
Yes.
That's a big help too.
Yes.
And so as we were talking about like scheduling some different things, you hit on a couple of these already. The Minnesota Elementary Principals Association, when they have their school office training, they call it out and about time. Basically trying to schedule time where you're just out in the building, in classrooms, in the lunchroom, at recess, where the learning is happening, and just being out and about. That you don't have any agenda other than to just watch and learn as kids are learning and getting a feel for what's going on.
And one thing I would add to that, when you are out and about, however much time, I usually schedule like 15, 20 minutes in the morning, bring a notepad with you when you're out and about, because that way as teachers, students, staff members, as they approach you and they have questions or they need support with something, you can jot that request down or whatever it is that you're talking about, jot it down in your notepad. And then when you get back to your office, you add that to your task list. Because what you're doing then is you are reducing the amount of email that's going to be coming into your email box, because you're already having those conversations out and about.
Yeah. And a good goal for me was like almost 16 hours, almost 2 full days worth of out and about, right? Because when you're out and about, you're modeling your vision, you're modeling your mission, you are being supportive, you're having conversations, and you're learning all the time. So if in a week I could get, and I didn't schedule it like as whole days, but I might have an hour or two here, an hour or two there. One of the days, like I always had out and about time for me when I was at Sartell on Tuesdays, because we had admin meetings in the morning and I never knew quite exactly when it would end. So I would schedule out and about time afterwards so that somebody wasn't waiting on me for a meeting or doing some different things. That way that I scheduled it at a point where if I'm late coming back from admin, um, it didn't have a major impact on anyone else.
Yep, that's a good idea.
And then we talked a little bit about this the next couple last week when we were talking about email and communications is scheduling office to do tasks. We talked about like if something comes in an email with a task for you to just schedule it right to your email, but it's also those things that you're taking on your note sheet or your notebook that you were carrying around, scheduling in time to complete tasks. This is going to take me 40 minutes, so I'm going to schedule 40 minutes for it. Scheduling in that time for email and phone communications that try to make all the other times, I call it communication free, but it's meaning I'm not using email and I'm not using phone calls to communicate. Anything else would be in-person type conversations.
And one thing around that, Kip, that I'll add is letting your staff know that you're going to be checking email at certain times of the day. Like I'm going to check it right away when I get to school. I'm going to be checking it around noon. I'm going to be checking it at the end of the day. And if there is a crisis or there is something that teachers or staff need support with, they should call the office and the office will find you either via radio or they'll know you're in your office. Because sometimes people think that email is like instant messaging. And they'll say, well, why didn't you come down to my room? I sent you an email on it. It's like, well, I wasn't checking. I check my email 3 times during the day. Remember, if there's a crisis, contact the office and I'll get there. So there's a little bit of upfront work that you need to do to let staff know how you want to be communicated with.
Yeah. And a few other things that we need to advocate for, that you need to get on your calendar. Professional reading time, right? Whether those are blogs or it's the latest research or it's a book study thing that you might have going on, and we'd be trying to encourage this with our staff too and our teachers too, that they're using some of their time when students aren't present for professional reading. But it also means you have to take some other things off of people's plates, but to make that happen. But it is important to stay up to date on the current research and what are the best trends that are going on in education right now. You can't lead the work if you're not doing the work. And also making sure you're scheduling time with your admin assistant. There's a lot of things that he or she can take off of your plate if you schedule time with him or her and make sure that that you're building that relationship and collegiality that that they can take some of the work off of your plate. And the last one on the slide, we already mentioned, like getting those recurring events on there. So if you do lunch with the principal or a principal book club, your staff meetings, daily announcements, whatever it is, get them on your calendar in those recurring events. And so they're just there. And it makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah. The next slide that we're looking at is about trust with your administrative assistant to manage your calendar. And I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I will go back and give a shout out to my administrative assistant, Lori Pratt at Otsego Elementary School. She was the best. She, when you talk about having that regularly scheduled time to meet about, Lori would bring in a folder of stuff for me to sign. And it was usually timesheets and forms, things like that I needed to sign. And as I was signing those things, we would be talking about things that were going on in the building, whether it was some type of special event that was coming up, or um, conversations around finance and budget, those kind of things. But Lori also had she had access to my calendar. So if something came up where it was a student behavior situation or something that I needed to, I couldn't go to an observation, or there was a meeting that I was going to have to juggle my schedule, I would just ask Lori to reschedule those events. She would make the contacts with the teachers or parents or whomever it was I was supposed to have meetings with, and she had total power to reschedule those events as necessary. So so it's, when we were talking earlier about putting these events, like the recurring events in your calendar, do your best to stick to your calendar. And as things come up and you need to shuffle things in your calendar, know that you have the flexibility to do that. Also keep in mind, as you're shuffling events, what are things that need to get done? What are priority things that need to get done? What kind of things do you need to, you need to keep that boundary in place for you to get things done. Like if you have a big report that you need to do, or if you have an observation report that you need to get done that day, you have to know, and it's okay for you to protect your time. If somebody comes in unannounced to talk to you, I would have Lori, my administrative assistant, she would schedule, I would just say, talk to Lori about a time that we can connect. They would go do it. She would take care of scheduling that time. So know that you have to do a good job of protecting your own time. And Kip, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what you did as a principal, but I know that you did some similar things.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a whole lot to add other than, I had some amazing admin assistants. I had 4 of them over my 12-year principal career, plus then some receptionists or other, media or clerks or different things that might have worked in the office. But when things were really going well, I would have said their role was like kind of the office bouncer, right? Like they kept, you talked about if somebody came in unannounced. When I was in really great spots, if they didn't get to me unannounced, right? Like, either when I was at Bold, Linda was awesome. She set up her desk in such a way that people had to walk around her desk to get into my office. So like you didn't just do that, right? Like you had to is he available? Or is now a good time? Some of those different things. And then, when I was in Eden Prairie, I had Tanya and Cassandra, and they were awesome. Like they even answered my phone, so that
man.
I wasn't. And so they kind of played the bouncer role. Like, is this really an emergency that you need to talk to him right now or not? And we had that kind of relationship where they were able to determine, is this an immediate call that needs to go through now, or can I reschedule a time for you later? And then I had Deb and Marcia at Oak Ridge that were the same way.
Yeah.
That they are also the ones that helped you stick to the calendar, like knocking on your door and saying, we need to wrap this meeting up because you're supposed to be here
Yes.
at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
And then talking to the other stakeholders in the room of like, if you need more time, let's go schedule it right now so we get you on the calendar to continue this conversation.
That's a great point, Kip. Like having some type of signal. If somebody walks in unannounced and they happen to get past, in my case, Lori or Melissa Bailey, she's our attendance secretary. If they got by both of those ladies, Lori or Melissa would probably give them about 3 minutes, and then they would call, or they would come knock on the door and say, "Hey, remember you've got this whatever coming up in a couple of minutes. Need to wrap this up."
So a good when you got a good relationship and you've got a good admin assistant, he or she will be the bouncer of the office, right? Like
Yep.
they will determine who gets in and out. So it's not a
Yep.
true open door. It's a controlled door.
It's a controlled door, yes. And you bring up a good point here, Kip. If you have multiple people in your office, like for me, it was Lori and Melissa. It was important that I had that relationship with both of them So in case one of them stepped out, the other one was there to cover.
So now we're going to jump into some time management hacks too, of just kind of making your way through your day. And the first one that's super important is know your peak times. Know the time of day that works in your schedule for you to be productive. I've shared several times that, in Sartell, that's my most recent principalship. Our kids got off the bus at 7:20. So I tried to get to school at about 6:45. And that time from 6:45 to 7:15 was like some of the most productive time that I had. Because there was no, but everybody else that was in the building at that time, they were worried about getting their day started. So it was kind of an uninterrupted time. I'd had a little bit of a drive to get there, so I'd been able to kind of ramp myself up and get ready. And so that was a really big peak time for me. The other one then was, so the kids would get off the bus at 7:20 and I would spend some time walking around and doing some different things, was then like 8 to 9. The school day had now scheduled in. We were a half hour into the school day. Everything had settled down. We'd gotten all of our sub issues sorted out or knew who was covering what. That 8 to 9 became another really productive time. That was the time that I could really hammer out tasks or activities as best I could. And so then with that, then stopping to think about, and depending on the type of person you are, do you start with the easiest tasks so you rattle them off? Or are you I got to do the hardest task first, otherwise I'm going to keep putting it off? But that's part of knowing yourself of what do I start with? Do I start with the easiest task so I can see progress and check? Or do I need to really focus in on this hardest task because I won't if I don't do it right now? So that peak time and knowing the order is a big deal.
I would agree. For me, it was morning, and it's always morning. I would say I'm most productive before about 1 o'clock. And after that, if I have a task that requires sustained attention, I'm going to struggle.
And and some of it's not always your personal peak time either. Sometimes it's about like the flow of the building. Because like you said, after 1 o'clock can be a personal challenge, but oftentimes at school, like now you've come through lunch, you've come through recess, and the day kind of just settles back in again after you've dealt with those types of scenarios and situations, that it might be a good time to be doing some tasks because I'm not going to get interrupted very often, because of the flow of the school day at that time.
Correct. Good point.
Another one is think of big projects in a bunch of small tasks and creating those separately instead of like, I'm going to do the whole budget today, right? Like you might break it off and I'm going to focus on just classroom supplies, or I'm going to break it off to just professional development, and breaking it up into smaller tasks so that you can stay focused.
Yep.
Another reminder is disable your notifications. Turn off your email, turn off those notifications so you don't get pulled into that time suck of like, ooh, there's a badge, I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah, I would say disable your email, your social media, however many of those you might have. The only notifications that I have coming up on my phone right now are text messages. That's the only one. Otherwise, I don't get any notifications.
And then we talked about this last week. If it takes less than 2 minutes, do it now.
Yeah.
If some kind of task comes up or something and it'll take you less than 2 minutes, just get it off your plate. Be done with it, because it would take you just as long to write it down, move it to get it on your calendar, or have a conversation with your admin assistant to put it on your calendar. Less than 2 minutes, do it now. And the other one that I found to be a really actually good time saver is if you're listening to audiobooks or podcasts, crank it up to about 1.5 speed, maybe even 2, because they do it at a speed that is less than conversational speech oftentimes.
Yes. Yeah. And that's an awesome hack, especially if you are trying to get through a lot of material. 1.5, you can usually understand it and you can process it. So yeah, I don't listen to too many things at like 1.0 speed anymore, unless it's something I really need to absorb. Then I'll listen to it at 1.0.
Yeah. So, I mean, you get done with it a lot faster.
Yeah.
Another one that we talked about last week was creating that back burner folder of like, this is something that I want to think about or I want to do, but the time is not right now. And so just putting it away in a folder, one folder with all of your grand plans and schemes and ideas so that you can pull it out at another time.
And with that, again, use your calendar, because you have to come back and revisit this back burner folder. Okay. So you have to put some time in, even if it's 10, 15 minutes, to go back on a weekly basis, to go back and look at that back burner folder, because you don't want to throw something in the back burner folder and then all of a sudden you check it a month later and it's like, oh my gosh, I totally, like, this is whatever this is, it's due tomorrow. That creates a lot of undue stress. So make sure that you set some type of reminder so that you go back and check that back burner folder.
Another one that pops up often as a school leader is you come across an article that you want to read later, but you don't really have time for it now. And so where do you put it? So you could create a folder in your email if it came by way of email, and you could just slide it in articles for later. But there's also a couple of good apps out there, one being Pocket and the other one being Evernote, where you can actually just clip the article from the web and it'll save in your Pocket folder or in your Evernote folder for you. And then you can come back to it later. Very little professional development needed to learn how to use Pocket or Evernote, but they go across devices. So it's really nice that you can have the app on your phone and you can have the application on your internet browser. And so once you kind of clip and save, it goes across your devices.
Another one, Kip, that I just come across recently, and I don't know why I'm just coming across it now, is on Chrome, there is a spot there for a reading list. So as you see an interesting article, you can add it to your reading list, and then that will save that. It'll save that tab. It'll save that URL, and then you can go back to it at a later time.
Yeah. And then the next couple of bullets that we have up on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're not, it's okay. We're giving you the play-by-play. Go hand in hand. One, schedule your tasks that you need to do in like 45 to 50-minute increments, just to help with your focus. And then on the extra time within that hour, make sure you're giving yourself some 5-minute breaks. If you're an elementary principal, you're going to know what I'm going to say right here, right? Like, for that 5-minute break, get yourself down to a kindergarten classroom, because they're going to hug you, love you up, make you feel really good about you, and get you energized and ready to go, right? If you're a high school principal, maybe it's visiting the commons or like places where just are high energy. But get out of your office, take a quick walk, stretch, refocus, talk to people, kids and adults. And so you fill your hour by a 50-minute task with a 5 to 10-minute re-energizing by being out and about a little bit.
Yeah, and if you want to be really crazy, you can even use the bathroom during that 5 to 10-minute break.
And then finally, our last time management hack: don't be afraid to close your door. We talked about it earlier. An open door policy is great in theory, but probably poor in practicality. You really want a controlled door where you're accessible to people, but accessible when it works for all involved. Because otherwise, one person comes in and then the next person comes in and the next person comes in, and all of a sudden you have 3 people in your office and none of them are getting the attention that they deserve.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I really like the term controlled door, Kip. I totally agree with you too. Like, it's, in theory, you come into your first administrative job and hear a lot of people say, yeah, I want to have an open door policy. Like, people can come in and talk to me whenever they want to. And it's well intentioned, but realistically, if you want to maintain your sanity and control your calendar, you have to have a controlled door.
Yeah, and so there you have it. This is like the Does your calendar control you, or do you control your calendar? 201 lesson. We did the 101 a little over a year ago. Now we did the 201. And again, if there's anything that resonated with you, or you think, "God, I want to talk more about that," you can get a hold of Todd or I. Todd through Twitter is @principal_learner, but principal is not spelled correctly, nor is learner.
Didn't have enough characters.
And I am @KipLink, all one word, to find us that way. Otherwise, we are members of the MinnEDsota's principal leadership support team. You can find us by searching for us on the internet that way, or through our emails and our cooperatives that we work with. We would love to help you out. I mean, I just had a conversation with a principal last week about this, and it was a principal that has a lot of duties within the district. So it's not just being a building principal; it's multiple buildings and multiple tasks and responsibilities. And we spent a good time just talking about how we could coordinate that calendar, how we could fine tune the amount of time that's getting taken up by email communications and phone communications, and being able to use drive time between spots to still be productive as well, without being dangerous on the road. So we want to help, and we're here to help. And so hopefully there's a couple of nuggets that you'll take and will make you a little bit more efficient today.
And I would probably say that Kip and I are kind of geeks in this area. I love talking, email, calendar, those type of strategies, just because, both of us know the importance of being effective and efficient with your time. So like Kip said, reach out to us if you want to have a conversation around this.
And you know what? Past this, if you've got some colleagues or friends that would benefit from this information, pass the podcast on to them. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on Anchor. We move the video of it to YouTube, and that's the MinnEDsota podcast on YouTube. That's our YouTube channel. All 18 episodes will be there as soon as this one is uploaded. And so you can go back and see any of them and see our guests in person, or like I said, you're however you normally get a podcast, or you share your podcast with friends. We're here. We want people to be productive and efficient, but mostly we want balance. We want healthy, strong principals that can take care of themselves so that they can take care of others.
And you're talking about having healthy principles. I was just going to say that you and I were on so many different places where you can pick up our podcast. We're almost like we're germs. Just can't get away from us.
Yep. And listen to us at 1.5 speed, right? You don't need to listen to us at regular speed. Listen to us at 1.5.
Exactly.
All right. I think we're going to be back in 2 weeks with another episode. May dig a little bit deeper if we hear any more about this. Otherwise, we will be back with a new topic in just a couple of weeks, and we hope that you join us here on the MinnEDsota podcast.
Well, and I'm just
MinnEDsota.
I'm just going to throw this out there, Kip. Like, our next podcast is going to be it's kind of scheduled to be getting close to the end of the legislative session. So I don't want to jump the gun on a potential guest or anything, but we've had this person on before, and they're pretty knowledgeable around legislative issues that impact education. So just throwing that out
if it's not the next one, it might be the one after that.
Yeah. So, all right, let's wrap this baby up, Kip.
All right. Well, for the doctor, Todd Van Erp, I'm Kip Link, the duffer, excited to finally get out and start golfing here. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.